What's up, everybody? How's it going, y'all? Hang on one second. Let me get this angle correct. I thought it was correct, and it just is off a little bit. Well, how's it going? This is Dylan Talks Tone Thursday live Q&A session. If you're new to this channel, I always have to turn my headphones down every week. If you're new to this channel, this is where we answer questions and. Typically, people go over to patreon.com/Dylan Talks Tone and they ask them for a guaranteed feature in the Thursday live stream. And then I try to get to random ones as they come up. I've got a couple in the can and ready to go this week. I should mention that, let's see. I should mention somebody said mobile guitar show. So we are in southern Wisconsin right now, right outside of La Crosse, Wisconsin. Really pretty. Cold at night. It's fall. It's starting to get chilly at night for sure. But as a benefit, we don't have to run the air conditioning 24/7, so that's pretty cool. So that's where we are, and we're headed to Michigan Saturday, towards Michigan Saturday. His thumbs down guy here already. Yeah. So that's what we got going. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna get into some questions. We're gonna get straight into them, and then I'm gonna tell you about a cool video that's coming out tomorrow. Typically, I don't have videos coming out on Fridays, but tomorrow is a special day, so that's pretty sweet. So, first of all, let's get over to Patreon and answer a question. Ivan says, I might forget this later this week. Can we do a deep dive into ground loops? This article on the Fralin website tends to throw curveballs in the subject. We can. So we have a really good video, actually, that is a deep dive into ground loops. And basically the long and the short of it is, you can go watch that video. It's a pretty good one. I tried to be as thorough as possible. But the bottom line is you can't have a ground loop in a guitar. In a passive guitar, you can't have a ground loop. Because a ground loop happens when there is a differential in possible current between two power supplies, two grounds. So, for example, if you have a pedal board power supply and you have an amp, and that's a bad example. If you have two amps and you're trying to run them together, you have this one grounded, you have this one grounded, and you have a signal wire that goes between them. That can cause a ground loop if there is a difference in the potential of the grounds. Meaning that if one is on one circuit and one is on the other circuit, how can you combat that? Basically, you can do one or two things. You can use isolated power supplies, which that's what most pedal boards do for the pedal board side of it. And you can plug your amplifier into the same outlet. So like put it on the same surge protector, power strip, power supply, so that it's not on different circuits, so that there's no possibility of it having two different ground potentials. Now, in a guitar, that is not possible. All grounds, there is only one ground in a guitar. Now, I know that all the components ground in a guitar, so they're separate components. But for all intents and purposes, there's only one ground in a guitar, and it terminates at the output jack. And we hook everything to that ground that terminates to the output jack. Okay? So, that being said, everything is on the same ground, so everything is on the same ground potential. There's no possibility for different ground potentials. The only thing that could disguise itself as a ground loop is a bad solder when you had a resistance issue. People will try to say all day long that where you solder things in the guitar, these star grounding things and all this garbage, will make a difference in that. But it just will not, because the ground potential never changes. It's the output jack. That is it, period. So it cannot happen. It cannot happen in a guitar. It just can't. You have to have two different ground potentials, two different power supplies, and a signal crossing between them. That is the definition of a ground loop. So you could have a pedal board power supply, an amp power supply, and a signal that goes between them, causing a ground loop. But it doesn't happen as much as everybody thinks it does, number one, because most power supplies are isolated, like pedal board power supplies are isolated, number one. And number two, you're usually playing on the same circuit. You know, it could happen in some really old place or something, but not very often. Not very often at all. Okay, let's go to another one. Gayton Dubé, I'm sorry if I'm screwing up your name, says, thanks for another great video. Quick question. Being blind, I'm having issues setting up action and adjusting relief with the truss rod. I cannot rely on my eye and I use a ruler. What kind of object can I use as a gauge when measuring relief and action? Which frets? 7th, 12th, 14th, where the neck meets the body. Also, for adjusting pickup height, it would be easier if I could just put something like a block on the fretboard on the pick guard instead of directly measuring between itself and the string, or the pickup top itself and the string. Big thanks. Okay, let's break this down. So, if you have a hard time seeing, so yeah, we're talking like 5/1000ths of an inch on fretboard relief, right? So that's pretty hard. It is hard to see. It's hard to see if you have good eyesight. So I can understand your plate there. So the way you check fretboard relief is you fret the first fret and you fret the last fret where the guitar joins to the body. So on an acoustic guitar, that might be the 12th fret. On most electric guitars, it's somewhere between the 14th and the 17th. It doesn't matter. It's just wherever the fretboard meets the body. That's where you want to check your neck relief. So you fret the first fret and where it meets the body, and then you asked which fret do you check that under. That's also a variable because you don't know where it's meeting the body on every guitar. You just want to go halfway in between. So if it's here and it's here, then you want to check it somewhere in here. The closest fret to halfway in between, that's where you want your gap. Now for checking fret relief, what I would do if I couldn't see everything all the time, what I would probably do is I would get a feeler gauge that was the desired thickness. So what I mean by that is if you want to go 10/1000ths, 15/1000ths, whatever you want your fretboard action to be, get a feeler gauge that's that thickness and only have that one. Like take it out of the set and have it separately, right? Then you don't have to worry about reading them. You don't have to worry about picking it apart. Just have that one and know that that one is your fretboard relief checker. And then put a capo on each end, or put a capo on the first fret and fret this one with your finger and then stick it in there. If there's a gap, you know which way to go. If it's too tight, you know which way to go. Don't worry about the actual thickness and it changing. Just know that that's your goal thickness. So you only have that one fret, or you only have that one feeler gauge to worry about. Then you don't have to read them. You don't have to separate them. You don't have to, sort through them. I do that with a lot of stuff. If I've got a set of something, but I know that this is my one tool that I'm going to use, I just pull that tool out of the set and have it in my, this is the set of stuff that I use for this one project, and then I don't have to flip through all the tools, and I can just grab it without looking, which in effect is what it sounds like you need to do in your situation. So that's what I would personally do, is just whatever your goal, where you want it to be, use that one thing. Okay, and then he also asks for pickup height, could I have a block on the fretboard or on the pick guard instead of directly measuring between the fret itself and the string or the pickup top itself? Okay, so this is where I would do pretty much the same thing, only a feeler gauge won't work because it's so thin. This is where you could do the same thing, where you could have your goal height, which you want it to be. However, okay, let me back up. Pickup height, there is no measurement for pickup height. The way, I mean, really, everybody sets pickup height by ear, right? That's kind of what we all do. On a Strat, for example, typically what I do is I raise the neck, I fret the last fret on the fretboard, so like the 22nd fret. I fret it with my finger, and I just make sure that when I'm playing that last note, that pickup doesn't hit that the string doesn't hit the pickup, like that there's some clearance there. And then I just by ear raise the bridge one usually to where when I flip, you know, between neck and bridge and neck and bridge, it's the desired sound that I want, and that's different for everybody. So you don't actually even need a measurement or a measurement tool for this. Now it ends up being somewhere around 150 thousandths of an inch, 2 American dimes and a nickel, usually. But that's only just because somebody said that once and it ended up measuring out to that. This is all totally by feel. So I don't even think you need a measuring block for checking your pickup height. And then on the middle one, I'm going to be honest with you, on the middle one, what I do is I get the bridge and the neck basically volume balanced so that when I switch back and forth, it's pretty balanced. And then in the middle one, all I do is I like a certain kind of Strat sound, and the output of the middle pickup. So if you think about like Stevie Ray Vaughan Dirty Pool or Tin Pan Alley, like those are, to me, that is what a Strat should sound like. That is what my pickups sound like when we make them. That is the sound for Strat pickups in my mind. What's another one? Pearl Jam, Yellow Ledbetter, right? Like those, that is the Strat sound. Where you get that scoop from, that tubular scoop in a Strat, for example, is, and this is a little an aside, but I'm just giving you an idea, is the output of the middle pickup, how it relates to the neck pickup. That is where that sound comes from. So I just adjust the middle pickup on a Strat, for example, to where it sounds like that Yellow Ledbetter, that Dirty Pool, that sound that everybody likes. So I don't think necessarily that you need a piece of equipment to do that. That would be I would say. I saw this question, I was like, now I love the fact that he's still trying to play. He's still trying to set up his own guitars, and we got to spend some time on this one. That was a great question. Let's see. Michael McCoy says, let me get a drink of water. Your explanation on setting the truss rod after changing the string gauge makes sense. So we just talked about this in our last video. If you raise the string gauge, it's going to pull on the neck more. So you got to adjust your truss rod. But all the limited videos I've seen has the truss rod adjusted before the strings were added. Please show how you would do this after the strings were added. I don't know what videos you're watching, but in order to adjust the truss rod correctly, you have to have the string gauge that you're going to play, and you have to have the tuning that you're going to play. So next week when we do a video, we're going to talk about alternate tunings and how that will affect your truss rod. Okay, so when we take set 2 off and put set 3 on. We're going to talk about that. But you never, okay. And where the confusion, I'm just realizing, where the confusion possibly may be is when you check your frets, okay, when you check how flat your fretboard is and whether you have bad frets, you do that with no strings on it and you adjust it with a straight edge to where it's totally straight. But that's not your final action adjustment, final neck relief adjustment. You have to have your strings on the guitar and it tuned to the pitch, the tuning that you're going to use. In our next string change video, we're going to get into that specifically. So we will talk about that some more. But you never set your string or your neck relief with strings off the guitar. That wouldn't really work. Because you're relying on that tension to give you the right thing. Let's see. Rothby Kirkendall says, "Hey Dylan, great channel. I was watching your video on guitar cables from a month ago. I'd like to ask you a question about foil shielded cables. Do you feel that they make a difference and are they still being made?" I guess that's actually 2 questions. Okay. What he's talking about is in a guitar cable, the center conductor is in the middle. Then there's like this foam stuff. Well, it depends on the cable, but good cables, there's just like foam stuff. And then cables are shielded. There are cables that they use basically like a copper foil to, and what they literally do is it's like a strip of copper foil that's about like that wide, and they lay the cable in it and they literally wrap, it's like 100% solid, and then they put the outside insulation on it. There are other cables that are like a braid, and those are probably the ones that you've been familiar with more so. Is there a difference? Not really. So the thing about cables is you're always going to have capacitive loss and you're always going to have a little bit of noise, and you're trying to fight those 2 things. And the way you fight those 2 things is the effectiveness of the shielding as well as the thickness of the cable, so the distance between the center conductor and the outside shielding. So you could make a cable that was like this big around with a tiny conductor in the middle, and there would be like zero capacitive, like hardly any capacitive loss. The problem is you couldn't cable it, you couldn't like roll it up, you couldn't use it, it wouldn't be flexible. Same thing with shielding. The reason they use braided shielding is because it gives when you bend it. Foil shielding, you'll see that a lot in longer run like speaker wire and stuff, or like 70 volt systems for like PA systems, like in a school, like like when the principal comes over the thing and says, "Get your butt to the principal's office." That is called a 70 volt system. It's a completely different, it uses a transformer. It's a completely different thing. Those usually a lot of times will have foil shielding in them. The thing is though, is and also permanent installed stuff can have foil shielding, but it doesn't bend very good. It's not very flexible. When you coil it up, it twists. There's like a lot of reasons that it doesn't make it practical to put into a guitar cable. Is it better? When you look at guitar cables these days, if you look on the side of it, it'll say 95% shielded cable or 98% shielded cable. Truthfully, it's 100% shielded. In fact, the company that makes my cable when I was selling guitar cables told me this. The reason they put 95% shielded or 98% shielded is because actually it's 100% shielded, braided or foil. The problem is that if they say 100% and there's any noise present outside of their control, then it's quote unquote false advertising. So to basically cover their butts, they put 95% or 98% shielded. But actually, there's really no difference in the overall effectiveness between those two types of shielding. Bet you didn't know that. But that's an interesting, that's a really cool question, actually. And I know I kind of went way more in depth on it, but that's a neat one. Because it's one of those advertising things. But when you think about it, it makes sense. If you bought 100% shielded cable and there was any noise at all, you'd be bummed out or upset. You know what I mean? Um, so yeah, man. Um, yeah. Oh, we got a super chat from Gary Redburn. Thanks so much for the live Q&A. I've missed seeing them. I learned so much as a newbie. Thanks, Gary. I appreciate that. And thanks so much for the super chat, too. Those really mean a lot when we're trying to put these videos together. They really do mean a lot. I do appreciate it. Let's see. Let me make sure that I got all the questions that I was supposed to ask today. And then I'm going to tell you about a cool video tomorrow. Let me just double check here. I think that's it. I think that's everybody. Let me just make sure. There's one more place where I post this so that people can ask. And Nope, that's pretty much it. Awesome. Very cool. Awesome. Okay, so tomorrow's video. Somebody was just asking me, Anthony Ferrantino. What's going on, Anthony? So, quick story. Anthony and I have been friends for like 20 years. I haven't talked to him in like 10 years. He called me the other day. Pretty cool. Okay, so this video coming out tomorrow. I think it was Ivan asked on Facebook the other day. Yep. It was Ivan Shank, wasn't it? Have you ever thought about doing a collaboration with Dan from Guns and Guitars? What's really funny about that is Dan and I had just got off Facebook messaging because we were, in fact, just before this video, I was actually sending him video clips. Tomorrow is going to be a really cool video. I don't know if you guys know about the whole, what's it called? The Great Guitar Build-Off. But I made pickups for his entry. So cool. I'm really thankful to him for asking me to do it. And then it turns out that, well, you'll just have to see. You'll just have to see. It's awesome. So I think it's coming out at 5 o'clock, 7 o'clock. Wait. It'll be 7 o'clock Eastern time, I think, because he wants it to come out at 5 o'clock Arizona time. So it's going to come out at 5 o'clock Arizona time, his video about his build on his guitar. So I made a video about the pickups that go into that guitar, and that video is going to come out at the same time as that video. So you guys are going to dig that. You guys are going to dig that a lot. So, yeah, man. Let me go back through these questions really fast and just see if there's anything that I'm missing here. I think you guys are going to dig that. And then Monday, we're probably going to have extra video next week too, because Monday is going to be changing strings again. But I have this other video that I've been wanting to make, and so I might make it also. Okay, so Anthony Ferrantino asked me, so if I go with that humbucker, what will you do with the single coils for my Strat? Okay, so, and actually, Ivan, if you are on this, you still are, you can chime in here. And then I will tell you the story about the Texas Toast entry also in a minute. So the reason I mentioned Ivan Shank is because he actually ordered this setup from me before. So what we're gonna do for Anthony Ferrantino, he's a viewer here, friend of mine. He's gonna actually order from us a single hum setup for a Strat. That is my favorite thing. What we're gonna do is we're gonna put our center punch or our 8-ball. Probably he said 8-ball, so that's cool. The beauty about the 8-ball and the center punch pickups are that I'll get to you in a minute, Doug. Thank you. The beauty of the center punch pickup and the 8-ball pickup, and the only difference is a little bit of an output difference, is that when you coil split them, they still sound like a single coil. And when you don't coil split them, they have a nice mid-range punch, so they give you like this really proper classic rock kind of sound, and you can actually go into metal with the 8-ball if you want, depending on the amp that you have. Really, really, really fun. So what I will do with the two other single coils is we will match them. They're going to be Alnico 5s. They're going to be flat tops. We don't do staggered pull pieces. They're going to be flat, which is fine because I think we're putting this in a Mexican style Strat. And they will probably be like wound to like 6.2 in the neck and like 6.4 in the middle. And then we will have this humbucker that will be amazing in the bridge. It's going to be killer. And then what I typically do on a single hum setup is I wire the tone. So you have a volume and two tones. So the volume is going to be a 500K pot. The middle tone is going to be a 500K pot, but it is going to have, the tone is going to be for the neck and the middle pickup. And that's going to have one capacitor on it, probably a 22. And then the bridge tone is going to have a 47 on it. And that one, maybe. We'll have to see. And then that one is going to only control the bridge pickup. So you'll have the neck in the middle on one tone, and you'll have the bridge pickup on another tone. That way you can set this thing up totally separately. And we're going to go ahead and coil split the bridge pickup so that you can have single when you want. Plus, you'll be able to adjust the tone separately. It will be the most versatile thing. It is the bomb. It is single hum and a Strat, to me, is just where it's at. Super cool. Okay, one thing at a time, and we're going to work down through this. So, Doug Santinello, thanks for the super chat. I appreciate that very much. He says, did you see Texas Toast Monstrosity guitar? Doug Santinello and I were actually at Texas Toast together during all those classes in July. And because Doug's actually a friend of mine from Florida. And we just happened to be there at the same time. And I couldn't say anything at the time, but I knew that they were doing a 3-neck guitar. What I did not know was the difference in scale lengths and stuff. I had no idea about the details, but he told me they were going to do a 3-neck guitar because I told him, I said, do you want me to make pickups for your guitar? I offered to do it. And he's like, before you offer, I'm going to tell you there's 3 necks on it, but that's all I'm saying. And then we got busy and we never really talked about it again. But the one thing that happened during that week was we had this how to make pickups class. It was super fun. And so we let people, in fact, Doug, I think, tried it. And I think he basically succeeded his very first time in being able to wind a pickup. It was super fun. I think we ran out of wire or something on his coil, so we didn't actually make it into a real pickup. But two of the other guys, so Chris and Jesse from Texas Toast, both wound coils that worked. They were 4K a piece or 4.5K a piece or something like that. So I took those two coils and I made them into a pickup. I just took their coils from them and we built them, into a pickup, and we put a cool humbucker carbon fiber cover on it. It was really cool looking. And though that pickup, I didn't know this because I didn't, I just told them use it in something, put it in something, make sure it works at some point, put it in a video. That would be cool. Well, then they ended up using it in the, I guess it would be called like the Nashville tuned half scale, 16-inch scale part of that guitar. So he has like a Nashville tuned octave up top neck, and then a regular neck, and then a baritone neck. So that top neck, that humbucker that's in that three pickup guitar, that's that's that pickup. So I didn't actually wind it. Those two guys did during that class, but then I just built it into a pickup. It was awesome. Super awesome. Let's see. Charles 75. I'm considering new pickups for my Tele, considering Dylan pickups or Texas specials. Okay. You know what I'm going to say here, but maybe not for the reasons you think. Our flat 6 Tele pickups, the story behind those is I took a 66 Tele that needed a bunch of work. A guy had bought it used, and it was feeding back real bad, microphonic and stuff. So I had to do some work on that guitar. While I had it, I took all the numbers and I took everything off of it, and I said, we're going to do the same thing we do with the DAF, with the humbucker. We're going to take those vintage specs, we're going to make them with modern materials, and we're going to have a 60s Tele tone in a Tele pickup. Those things rip. They are so good. I am not a fan of Texas specials, especially in the neck position, because I think they sound too thick and muddy. If you followed my channel for any time at all, you know that clarity is a thing for me, man. I cannot stand muddy pickups. I can't stand pickups that don't have that top end sparkle, which I think a Tele should have. Like, that's what it's made for. And so that's what ours have that the Texas specials don't have. And ours are going to clean up a little bit better because Texas specials are kind of hot, actually. So especially if you're playing like a Champ or a Princeton or a Blues Junior or something, you'll never really be able to get a good clean tone out of them, which ours are a little lower output, and I think you would dig them. They'll just be a little bit more versatile. I think you really dig them. Yeah. So let's see here. There was somebody else asked something too. Everybody's talking about Florida. I might be in Florida in the wintertime. We'll see. This has come up a bunch. I need to do a video on it because I don't like it. Okay. Have you ever tried, King Liberalist says, hey Dylan, have you ever tried Bill Lawrence's Coil tap mod, where he uses a cap plus resistor to shunt higher frequencies of one coil to ground, preserving some noise cancellation and lower frequencies? I don't like doing that. I think, and you'll hear me say this on other stuff too, in a passive guitar, when you do stuff like that, all you do is just take stuff away. And I think PRS does something like that, and I'm just not a fan of that method. I mean, that's my thing. I need to do a video on that so we can break that down some more, because I know I'm giving you like a super vague, like, I don't really have a reason, I just don't like it kind of answer, and I don't like doing that. So I need to break that down into a better video. But I'm not a fan of that. Basically what it is every time you add a component like that, and you shunt something to ground, you're right, you take high frequencies away and you gain, you are left with low frequencies. But why would you do that? And what is the reason? Like, why would you even do that? Like that, I don't know. That's just not a fun one for me. Kevin says, I want to shield a pick guard on my 66 SG, but it's the original pick guard. Go to WD and just get a second one. That's what I would do. And honestly, as long as it's not a single ply, because some of those single plies that taco a little bit, you know, they get a little like this. If you shield it, it will make it physically heavier. It will weigh more. It will weigh a lot more because copper shielding is not light. So, but if it's really good and it's really flat, then it wouldn't hurt anything because you can take it back off. If it's not flat and it's like tacoed and aged out, you know how sometimes as they get older they get a little wrinkly. Those Gibson ones especially do that. I wouldn't shield that because it will change the shape of it. I don't know if it's the tension of it or it's like just how you could mess up that originality of how that's aged. So maybe go buy a second one. You can get a SG pick guard super cheap. So I would try that. That's what I would do. Yeah, awesome. Actually, you're mentioning something here. Monsters of the Id. You were just mentioning something. Give me 1 second here. Is Adam Roan still here? Adam Roan, let me know if you're still here. I was really interested in your video about the Lumitone pickups with the transformer. Could you wire a transformer to a pot to make a volume knob that goes above the pickup volume? Huh. I mean, theoretically, you could use a step-up transformer. What that would do, I don't know. I mean, in theory, it would work. Because you've basically just taken a voltage and making it bigger. Yeah, I mean, you could do that. I don't know why you would want to. But yeah. So let's see. All right, it doesn't look like he's there anymore. Hang on 1 second. Well, King Liberalist, are you still here? Still here? Even if they both end up being here. Let me know if you're here. That'd be awesome. And as soon as we find out if they're here, I'm gonna give them something. And then, because I still have some of those Illumitones left, so I guess we should give a couple of those away. So, yeah, man. Awesome. And it doesn't look like those guys are here. So, Monsters of Id, I'll tell you what, send me an email. Go to Dylan Talks Tone, go in the contact form, and send me your address. Okay? That would be killer. And what's your opinion on the Lumitone? It's a really cool technology. Ask Monsters of Id in a couple weeks, and he'll be able to tell you because I'm going to send him one. My personal feeling is I think it is a fantastic technology, but I think it feels like and sounds like I'm playing a recording of myself. Ivan Shank, thank you so much for the metric $5. I appreciate that. Ivan Shank sends us metric money from Canada when he super chats. So that's what that is. Aluminium tones in the UK. That's awesome. So yeah, man, there we go. I think we're about 40 minutes into this thing. We covered a bunch of questions. Thanks everybody for the super chats. I do appreciate them very much. And some of you are on our Patreon too, and I do appreciate you over there. A couple of questions before we go. As Baba Booey, what do you think? Your PAF or SDJBs for the bridge? Anytime somebody says JB or Jazz, I tell them center punch, not the AF. Go center punch. And anytime people want to split something, tell them center punch too, because that thing splits so good. Yeah, definitely do a center punch in the bridge of that Strat for sure, definitely. And then Dennis asks, I may have missed something, but will this be posted sometime after the live stream is over? So these are always posted, and they live on in YouTube land forever afterwards. But the chat turns into, then you just comment like normal. So that's it. Where can I find a wiring diagram for one single coil, one humbucker with a 5-way switch, one volume, one tone? I don't know. I don't know. Actually, I don't know. There's a company, there's a place that you can, and I can't think of it right now. So, but we are putting more and more wiring diagrams over on our Patreon too. So, if you're interested in that stuff, for sure. Awesome. You guys have been great. Thank you so much for hanging out, and I really appreciate you all being here and doing these things with me every week. And stay tuned for the cool video tomorrow. Also, stay tuned for a video on Monday, and then we're probably going to have more than one next week too, because I have a really cool video about, well, I haven't shot it yet, but it's still in my head, but it's about how 5-way switches work. So somebody just asked about wiring a 5-way switch. You might not need a wiring diagram after I get done telling you how they work. You might be able to just figure it out by yourself. So with that being said, we'll see you tomorrow.